Hi, glad that you could join me today, and today I want to share some thoughts with you from Psalm 90. This psalm is entitled A Prayer of Moses, the Man of God. Let's hear this reading of God's Word. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn people back to dust, saying, Return to dust, you mortals. 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. Yet you sweep people away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. In the morning it springs up new, but by evening it is dry and withered. Relent, Lord. How long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years as we have seen trouble. May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord rest on us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. May the Lord bless to our understanding the hearing of this word. So my first job was at Iantha Seed Company in Iantha, Missouri. Now, if you look it up on the map, you might actually have a hard time finding it. It's this little tiny town in West Missouri. I was 16 years old, and I got recruited to help at a seed company. So what a seed company does is farmers will harvest grass seed from their field, fescue, and they will bring it in trucks and they will pull it up to the scales. The scales will weigh it, see how much moisture content it has, all of that. And then the trucks will pull around and unload that grass seed from the hopper into bins where it will go to the warehouse into big piles. So my job, along with many others, was to climb up in these seed trucks and with a pitchfork shovel the grass seed down the hopper. It doesn't just go down on its own accord. And once those are empty and the warehouse is full, then this big pile of grass seed, we get to shovel those piles down closer to the ground so there's room to add more in there. And so you're shoveling big piles of grass seed over and over and over. And after a few weeks of that, I very quickly realized that was not a career I wanted to develop for the rest of my life. My respect to folks who do that. It's really hard work, but yeah, that wasn't my thing. Since then, fortunately, I've been able to find some other jobs that I enjoy a whole lot more. I love the job that I have right now. And what I want to talk about today is that sense of work and satisfaction in work. How do I know what I do has meaning? How do I know that it has permanence? Especially in light of what we read in Psalm 90, there is this sense of, does what I do matter in the big scheme of things? Especially right now, as we are in this age of COVID-19, a lot of businesses are having to restructure. And I know that means a lot of folks are being displaced. A lot of folks are finding themselves without jobs. A lot of businesses are closing. And that makes for some really hard times. It's a lot of changes, a lot of upheaval in the job market and some things. Add to that all that's going on with artificial intelligence, and there's some people may be really a little bit insecure about the future of what's going to happen with my career, what's going to happen with my job. So this is definitely a really relevant issue right now. So let's ask this question of what we do really have permanence? So a lot of what people have done is kingdom building. They try to make their mark in the world, build things that last. And one of the best examples, I think, of really showing how something doesn't have permanence is the Roman Empire. You look at the Holy Roman Empire, and what was once the largest empire on the planet, stretching over a continent or more, now, today, geographically speaking, is literally the smallest country in the world. So take a look at this slide. Vatican City takes up 0.2 square miles. That actually translates into 128 acres. Now, to put that in context, the 1604 campus of Northern Hills, where I'm at right now, takes up 20 acres of property. Take about 6 times that, and that's the country. That is what is left of the Roman Empire. Yeah. So there's a thought. Definitely not something that is permanent, even though it might have seemed so at one point. Now, another example of this impermanence, Sacsayhuaman. Yeah, that's one of the words that rolls right off the tongue, right? Sacsayhuaman was a fortress that was built in the Incan capital city of Cusco in the Incan Empire. So in the times before the Spanish came in pre-Columbian Americas, this fortress, Sacsayhuaman, was probably one of the most impressive architectural accomplishments of the pre-Columbian Americas. It was one of the wonders of the world for South America at that time. And now, as time has passed, the Spanish came, they took over politically. They said, hey, we can use these stones for raw material for our own purposes. And so stone by stone, they picked this fortress apart until you see now what is of it in this slide. So another example of, are these kingdoms that we tried to build really permanent? Yeah, not so much. There has not been a single empire in the history of the world that has lasted forever. Food for thought. Now, we're talking about empires. Let's personalize this just a little bit. So we all sometimes try to build our own personal empires, our own personal kingdoms. We try to leave our mark in the world. We try to do things that make a difference, even if it's for noble reasons of wanting to make the world a better place. But at the end of the day, all those things that we invest in, there's the saying in English, you can't take it with you. And that is true. Because at the end of the day, we are mortal. Our lives will have an end. And even what we have left behind, we leave memorial stones, tombstones. And that, with time, fades. And so as our psalm tells us, 1,000 years is like nothing to God. That time passes quickly. And what comes of our lives? Now, I say all this not to depress you, so please don't take it as that. I actually am, where I'm going with all this is to give you a sense of hope. So the question in this is, what in my life has permanence? What in my life has permanence? Because at the end of the day, there are some things that, yes, do have permanence in your life. I want to unpack a little bit what those things are and why that is important. So let's talk about that. First of all, this world that we live in, a lot of times, even as Christians, we think, well, this is temporary, right? We're going to heaven to live forever. This world will fade away and become nothing, right? And we think that's biblical. After all, all of our hymns, I'll fly away, Amazing Grace, the earth will soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine. And we think, well, yeah, that's what the Bible teaches. Well, not totally. I know I'm going to maybe burst some bubbles here. A lot of those hymns that we know and love the most about heaven just really aren't strictly biblical. So what do I mean by that? We talk about Christ's return. We are awaiting Christ's return. And the Bible teaches us when Christ returns to this earth, he returns here, right? We are raised, bodily resurrection here, right? Now it says we will go to meet him in the air, but even that is more like the procession going outside the town gates to welcome a dignitary into the town. So yeah, we'll go into the air to meet him, but it's to welcome him back to this earth, right? Judgment Day probably happens here, because it says that happens when we are bodily raised. And the New Jerusalem in Revelation descends to here. What does that mean? That means that there's a continuity most likely between the here and now and eternity. That the stuff of the new creation, the raw material of the new creation, is the here and now. There is a continuity of that. There is a permanence to this world. Where we get this idea in Christianity sometimes that, this world is, the material world will fade away and we'll live spiritually forever, that comes much more from Platonism, so that's actually not really biblical. So I would encourage you, if you're holding tightly to the idea, start to let go of that a little bit, because I think that the Bible is actually a lot richer in what it teaches. So, for instance, the new heavens and the new earth that the Bible teaches us about refers to a freeing of the old heavens and the old earth from slavery to sin and death. But they will still be around, just fully redeemed. If you want to think of it like a recycled heavens and a recycled earth, that might actually be a better way of thinking about it. In the New Jerusalem that we learn about in Revelation 21, God will live with us directly, and there will be an undoing of Adam's curse. Adam was cursed with meaningless work, if you go back to Genesis. And in the new creation, there's a sense of we will be given meaningful work. So there's that breaking of Adam's curse and undoing of that. Part of that means we will still have a sense of purpose. We'll still have a sense of vocation. Have opportunity to work and create things, and it will be with our loving God directly working with us. So it will be a holy sense of vocation, which will be really, really cool. In the Apostles' Creed, when we say we believe in the resurrection of the body, that's really what we're talking about. It's not that we fly away and live this disembodied existence with angels and clouds and harps. None of that is really biblical. So, step back from that just a little bit, and I would invite you to rediscover what the Bible actually teaches on those things. Why that's important is this. It gives us a real hope. So if there's a permanence to creation, that means that what we do here matters. It matters eternally, and I mean that in a literal sense. So the things that we help build in terms of physical structures, in terms of community systems, in terms of cultural development, in terms of art that is created, other things that we produce, some of those things in some ways may actually still be around to some extent into eternity. So that's some food for thought. This world becomes the raw material of the next, meaning that what we do with this world does matter permanently. There's a hope in that, because what that means is the work that we do towards reconciliation, toward a fair and just society, toward integrity and doing what is right, toward building things that are beautiful, in some ways, some of those things actually may last forever. So it's worth investing in doing things the right way. So that's something really important to remember in life and ministry, that as we invest in doing things the right way, not only does it matter, it matters eternally. As Paul tells us in Philippians 4:8, and I love this verse, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, I would extend that to say, and I don't think this is too much of a stretch, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, invest in those things. Think about them, yes, and as an extension of that thinking, invest in those things. Build onto them, add to them. And in doing that, you are building onto something that will probably endure into eternity. So if you're asking if what you do matters, if what you do has permanence, as we invest in those things, those beautiful things that Paul tells us about, those things I believe will endure into eternity. That is, if this creation is going to be recycled, those are the recycled materials I think that God will make the most use of. So think about that. Also, what is permanent is love. We go to 1 Corinthians 13. Before we go there, let me go 1 Corinthians 3. This is 3 verses 10. By the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should build with care, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. So the question is, what remains and survives this test of fire? Paul gives us a clue in 1 Corinthians 13, so let's go there now. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So the implication of this is that what is eternal, in particular holy, mature love, is more real, of more importance and substance than the temporary things of this life. And I believe that is true. So, if we put this all together, what we talked about Philippians 4, 1 Corinthians 3, 1 Corinthians 13. Whatever is built out of holy, mature love, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is built out of these raw materials, and, most importantly, is built on the rock-solid and eternal foundation of Jesus Christ. Those things will withstand the test of fire and endure into eternity. So remember that. Remember that when you may be struggling with that sense of, does what I do matter? What is meaningful work for me? How do I invest in that? Remember that as a strong guideline for evaluating that and knowing how to wisely invest in what will last. So the last line of this psalm, Psalm 90, says, establish the work of our hands. And that is my prayer for us today, and I think a prayer that is really good to unpack every day of our lives. So I'm going to invite us to reflect on a couple things as we go about our lives this week. First of all, Paul talks about what is built on that foundation. Are our lives really, really grounded in that foundation of Jesus Christ? What is the foundation of my life? Is my life primarily defined by money? Is it defined by my family? Is it defined by my job? Is it defined by the stuff that I have? The one who dies with the most toys wins. You know, we joke about that, but sometimes unconsciously that is where we are. So I would invite you right now, rather than condemning you or saying, honestly take stock of that. Where am I with that? Is the core and the most solid foundation of my life grounded on Jesus Christ, on His grace, on His love, on His saving action on the cross? Am I there? Take stock of that. Evaluate that. Think about it. I would also invite us to pray, extend that prayer, establish the work of our hands, as a prayer for meaning and purpose in my life. I don't know where you're at. Maybe you recently lost your job, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. Maybe you're trying to search for that meaning. What is the meaning of my life? Why am I here? What am I doing? What is the point of what I'm going through? I mean, so many of us in this time of COVID-19 are wrestling with these questions of what's the point of all of this? And I would just encourage you to say, remember what we've learned today of asking God to establish a meaning and a purpose in your life based on these things that we've learned. And may God guide us toward that. May that be our prayer. So as you go through this week, as you go through your daily life, remember that. Ask God, how do I find your meaning and your purpose for my life? The one who wrote this psalm, Moses, think about this. Up until 80 years of age, his primary identity was as a fugitive and as one who kept sheep. That was his vocation. That was his work. That was how he knew himself to be. And at 80 years old, God called him to lead the people out of Egypt, become the national leader of the growing nation of Israel, and all the things that God worked through Moses. And he's still known to this day as the establisher of the law, as one of the founding prophets in Israel's history. So remember that. You may feel like your life doesn't have purpose now. Just wait and see what God will do with it. Probably surprise you. I would ask us also, establish the work of our hands. May this be a prayer for vocational satisfaction. If we're in a job that's frustrating, if we're in a job that's difficult, I hope and I pray that God may lead you into a place of shalom with that, into a place that you may walk in the fullness of God's life and the fullness of God's purpose for you. If the job where you're at is frustrating, pray for God for wisdom. What is the right action to take with that? Does that mean a different job? Does that mean working actively toward redemption in the job where you are? Does that mean just hang on a little longer and God will lead you and give you strength? I don't know. I don't know your circumstance. Pray about that. Again, Lord, establish the work of our hands. And then finally, prayer for wisdom and how to invest our time and our energy in daily life. As we go about our day and whatever we do, may God bless to his glory all that we do. And in so doing, may we find and encounter God's eternal purposes for our lives. Again, may God indeed establish the work of our hands. May it be so. Amen.